Good morning, boys and girls. Today we are going to begin talking about some array problems. But before we get started, I want to do some work on finding our knowns and our unknowns in our equal groups problems because we're still really learning about this and we're still really mastering it. So let's talk about it. I want you to get really good and comfy. You can get a piece of paper and you can draw these out and work with me as I go. I don't want the work to become all about you trying to catch up with me though. If you are spending time just trying to catch up and you're missing the most important part, which is the lesson, then I want you to stop and I just want you to watch the video. Moms and dads, you can be the best judge about what your child needs. And you know, they may tell you, I really need to just watch the video. But some students do need that direction. So I'm gonna read you a story. We're gonna work together. I'm gonna write the information down. We're gonna work together to decide where does this information go. And because it's equal groups, we know that we are either multiplying or dividing because in an equal groups problem, our labels do not match. Okay? Keep in mind that I only multiply when I'm looking for the total. If I know the total number of something, it is not a multiplication situation. So let's go through some of these together. There are 28 students in Mr. Jansen's class. Whoops, I put 28. I was going to put 28 Jansens. It's actually 28 students. The 28 is talking about the students. When they went to the library, the librarian asked them to sit 4 at each table. 4 what at each table? Sometimes our word problems in our classrooms do this to us. They don't necessarily give us our labels, but we have to think logically. 4 what will be at each table? Well, 4 students. At each table. Notice this word each. I see it up here also. I want to know how many tables it will take to seat all the students. So I'm just going to put how many tables for all. Okay, so I've got students, and I'm looking for tables. Remember from last week that when my labels are the same in my story and the question asks for something different, it is an automatic D1. But let's say while I'm working, I forget that. And let's go through this and decide if multiplication is actually what we want to do. If I have 28 students, well, that's not going to work. Never mind. I really want you to go with this idea for now anyway about how if the labels are the same in the story part, but the question asks for something different, it is an automatic divide. Now, boys and girls, if it's an automatic divide, my mystery number does not go in the total. Remember, the only time I multiply is when I'm looking for the total, and I'm not multiplying. So let's go through this. The 28 students in the story, is that the total number of students that there are? Yes. We did not get more students, but we are splitting these students up into groups of 4 at each table. So 28 students is the total. Now, if I have 4 students at each table, is that the number of groups or the number in each? Notice the each. In each group. You are correct if you notice that each and that 4 students is the number in each. So I am looking for how many groups there are, right? I'm not looking for the total number of students. I'm looking for how many tables do I need for all. So I'm going to take the whole, which is 28. It comes first. And I'm going to divide it by the 4 students at each table, and that's going to help me decide how many tables I need. 4, 8, 12, 16 in the blue with 20, 24, 28. 7, what? How many tables? So 7 is talking about the number of tables. Okay. Number of tables. Let's do a few more. Sorry, this blue doesn't erase very well. We're going to get it as best we can, and I'm actually going to change my color of marker. All right, let's try another one. The students got to check out some new books before they left the library. 9 of them. 9 of what? What's them? Good job. 9 is talking about the students. 9 of them got to check out 3 books each. And I want to know how many books in all. So how many books in all for these students? I've got students and books, and I'm looking for books. My labels don't match. I'm either multiplying or dividing. Let's decide. My question's asking about books, so I'm going to put a star by these 3 books. If there are 9 students and they each checked out 3 books, will there be more than 3 books in all or less? You are right if you said more. And more means multiply. And when I multiply, I'm looking for the total. Remember when we did the adding and subtracting, we said the only time I add is when I'm looking for the whole. It's very similar. The only time you multiply is when you're looking for the whole. And that's our question. Okay? So the 9 students with 3 books each. You see this word each? How I've got each up here. 9 is my groups. I'm going to put ST for students. And 3 books. I'm going to move this. Each. Each is important. So these are the pieces of my story. My question wants to know the total. So we are multiplying 9 groups of 3. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18 spacemen in their ships are waiting for 21 and 24 with 27. So 27, what? What is my question asking? How many books? Now my total is at the end of a multiplication, right? When I'm dividing, I start with the total, kind of like what we do when we subtract. Is this making more sense? A little more practice never hurts. Let's do one more with our equal groups as a review, and then let's move on to studying some array problems today. All right, when they got back to class, Mr. Jansen had his 28 students split up into 4 equal groups to complete some work. So there are 28 students, and they split up into 4 equal groups. And I want to know how many students were in each group. So how many students in each, oh, there's that word each again, in each group. Information, question. So I've got students and groups, and I'm looking for students. My labels do not match. If I have 28 students and I split them up into 4 equal groups, will there be more than 28 students in each group or less? Well, if I've got 28 students in all, and I'm going to be breaking them up, I know when we break up into groups in the class, the groups are small, I need less. And division gives me an answer that is less. So let's go through the 28 students in the class. Is that all the students or part of the students? It's actually all the students. It's my total, which makes sense because I'm dividing, so I'm not looking for my total. And it tells me 4 equal groups. That's this right here. And because my question says each group, this is my mystery number. Now, this is important, us thinking through these problems and me modeling this understanding and you really participating, because a lot of us barely moved on to these array problems for the simple fact that we are not putting these numbers where they go. So I really want you to pay attention. I'm really modeling this for you to help you, because our equal groups problems aren't going anywhere. Also, it will help you when you're working with your array problems. So let's do this. I'm going to start with my whole, which is 28. I'm going to divide by the number of groups, and that's going to tell me how many in each. So let's count by 4 to 28. 4, 8, 12, 16 in the blue with 20, 24, 28. Aha. 7 what? How many students? 7 students in each group. Boys and girls, the more we do this, the better we will get at it. Okay? And I'm really proud of you for sticking it out. And for my friends who really struggled on that progress monitoring, I'm hoping that this makes way, way more sense. Let's change our focus though from equal groups problems to array problems. All right, so today we're going to be solving story problems involving arrays, and so it's going to be really similar to the last lesson we did, except we are not necessarily going to be looking for the total. And remember, on the last lesson, they were all multiply because we were looking for the total. Today, our mystery number is going to appear in another place. Let's see if we can figure this out. The kids at King's School are putting on a big art show. Every class is going to display their very best collection of artwork. The 4th graders in Miss Patel's class have 32 watercolor paintings. So I'm going to actually just put 32 paintings. Watercolor is telling me what kind of paintings, but paintings is the most important part. After measuring the wall outside their classroom, they decided to make a display with 8 paintings in each row. So 8 paintings in each, ooh, that's important, row. And I want to know how many rows will there be in the display. So how many rows will there be? So So I've got paintings, and I'm looking for rows. Oh my goodness. Did you notice that in the story my labels match and my question is asking for something different? Automatic D1. Remember, in your story when the labels match and the question is asking you for something different, we are dividing. So let's go through this. That means we're not looking for the total. So let's find it. It's in the story. Are the 32 paintings all the paintings or part of the paintings? Well, the 32 paintings are all the paintings. We did not get more paintings in the story. So that's the total. Now look how it says in each row. Do you see each row up here at the top? There are 8 paintings in each row. That's also part, and so we are looking for how many rows will there be? I'm not looking for the whole, I am dividing. So I'm going to write my division sentence beginning with the total or the whole, and I'm going to divide it by 8, and that's going to tell me how many there are. Day 8, 16, 24, 32. 4. 4 what? My question says how many rows? 4 rows. I'm hoping that this makes a little more sense. The more we do the dividing, the more sense it's going to make. All right, let's try another one. I know this lesson is a little bit longer than some of our others, and I apologize for that, but we do still need that review with equal groups. So at any time, if you need a break, just to stretch your legs and move around and come back to it, pause. Try not to pause in the middle of a problem, but maybe at the end of one, take a quick stretch break and come back to it. All right, let's try another one. There are third graders that have 63 self-portraits to display on one of the walls in the gym. So I'm gonna write 63 self-portraits. Remember, we're talking about the art show at the school. They're going to arrange them so that there are 9 in each row. 9 what? Well, we're talking about self-portraits. So there are going to be 9 self-portraits in each row. Remember that each is important. How many rows will be in their display? So we're looking for how many rows in the display. I've got self-portraits, and I'm looking for rows. Ding, 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 ding. Remember, when my labels match in the story and my question asks for something different, it is an automatic D1, which means we are dividing. Let's go through and make sure. Are the 63 self-portraits all of the portraits or part of the portraits? Well, that's all the third graders made. So 63 is my total, and it's part of my story. The 9 self-portraits in each row. Notice there is in each row. So we know that this goes up here. That's part of the portraits, right? It's part of the story. And we are looking for how many rows, right? Which means we are dividing. So we are going to take 63 and we are going to divide by 9. So how many 9s in 63? 9, 18, 27, 36, 45. The magic in the hat of the rabbit makes numbers alive. 54, 63. 7. 7 what? How many rows? 7 rows. Good job, scholars. We are going to do 2 more problems today, and that will conclude our video lesson, and then you can take a break. Tomorrow, we will be completing some practice over finding the number of rows in our problems. Are you ready? Each of 64 second graders has made a fabric quilt square. So we're going to do 64 second graders. A parent is going to help them stitch the squares together to make one large quilt. They want to put 8 squares in each row. There's that in each row thing again. How many rows will their quilt have? So how many rows in the quilt? So I've got second graders and squares, and I'm looking for rows. Well, that's different, isn't it? Let's think about this. If each of the 64 second graders has a quilt square, is the 64 really talking about the second graders or their quilt squares, especially since there are 8 squares in each row of the quilt, and I want to know how many rows there are. Since the 64 is really talking about, or since the story is really about the quilt, and I know that each second grader has a quilt square, we can understand that there are 64 squares in the quilt. Does that make sense? The other way I could do this, if that is confusing to you, 64 really is, it is talking about 64 second graders have one quilt square. It is the same thing. Much easier in my mind to say and understand that there are 64 squares because there are 64 students. So I've got squares, and I'm looking for rows. My labels don't match, but ding, ding, ding. My information in my story has the same label, and my question's asking for something different. So let's go through and let's fill this out. We are not putting a mystery number in the total because we are dividing. We are not looking for the whole. The 64 squares that the second graders have, is that all the squares there are or part of the squares? Well, that is all the squares. There are no more squares in the story. That is the whole. The 8 squares in each row is part. It's how many there are in each row. That's also part of our story. And so we are looking for the number of rows. So we are going to start with the whole, which is 64, and we're going to divide it by 8 and find out how many rows there are. Day 8, 16, 24, 32. Roping and riding is what cowboys do. Day 40, 48, 56, 64. Ooh, 8. We went far in our 8s that time. 8 what? How many rows? 8 rows. All right, boys and girls, we are going to do one more of these together. I know that, or I hope that you are feeling more confident about this dividing business and that it's making more sense to you, particularly if you are paying attention to the labels in your story. And I'm hoping that using the cubes kind of helps us put a visual on our story. All right, last one. Let's do this. The kindergartners are going to display their shape collages in the front entry downstairs in the hallway. There are 55 collages. So I'm going to write that down. 55 collages. And the kids want to put 11 in each row. 11 what? 11 collages. Our stories are not always clear about that, but we have to really think logically about the story. How many rows can they make? I'm just going to write how many rows. So I've got collages, and I'm looking for rows. My labels are mighty different. In fact, I noticed that the labels are the same in the story, and the question asks for something different, which we've learned is an automatic D1, automatic divide. So let's go through this. The 55 collages that the kindergartners have for the art show, is that all of them or part of them? Well, it's all they made. It is the total. The 11 collages in each row, I forgot to do that, that's very important. We know in each row is important, and that's part of the collages. And we are looking for how many rows? So we've got 55 divided by 11. Now, boys and girls, we have not done our 11s. 11s are actually kind of an easy thing to think about. Because when you take 11 and you add them together, it gives you, notice how 11 is using the digit 1 2 times. You get an answer that has the same digit twice as well. So that's 1 11. That's 2 groups of 11. Let's add another 11. That's 3 groups of 11. We're getting closer. Add another group of 11. That's 4 groups, gives us 44. We got to 55, and it took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups of 11. So 5 is talking about how many rows? The answer will be 5 rows. Boys and girls, I am so, so proud of you. You are working hard, you are staying with it, and I'm hoping that in doing some practice today and yesterday, or today and the day before on equal groups is really helping you. I know it was a little bit long today, but I appreciate you hanging in there. And remember, at any time you need a break, you can just pause the video and resume when you're finished. I hope you have a wonderful day. Tomorrow we will meet back here and we will be completing some work on array problems. See you soon. Bye-bye.